All right, folks, it's time for a little college football coast to coast here on a Monday. And I guess this one's a little bit more special than the rest of them, but we hope that you would join myself and Pigskin Pete every Monday at noon Eastern time right here for college football coast to coast. And this would only and can only happen because of this guy, Pigskin Pete. How's it going today, man?
I'm amazing and fantastic. I'm really excited about this game tonight, Mark.
You're getting more juiced for it?
I'm getting juiced for it. I'm excited because we even have the game to begin with. A couple of months ago, we weren't sure if this was going to happen. And so now we have it, and it looks to me as if it's going to be a good matchup. We'll obviously talk about that, but I'm looking forward to it.
I have nothing to really pin this on, but the closer we get to the game, the more I'm confident it's going to be a good game.
Yeah.
Coming out of, even though Ohio State was extremely impressive against Clemson, I still just had those question marks about the Buckeyes. Of course, they've put it together for one full game. I would say their second half against Northwestern was the true Ohio State team playing at full throttle, and the first half of the Indiana game. So we've got maybe 2 games out of them out of 7, where Alabama has had a couple hiccups on defense against Florida and Ole Miss, but otherwise has shown to be pretty much the best team in the country. But for some reason, the more I add it up, I haven't given it a ton of thought, but as I do, doing these shows pretty much every day and having these conversations with people, some people bring some good points to light, and I'm feeling pretty good about it being a competitive game all the way through.
Big question mark is going to be Justin Fields' health. They've obviously been keeping that a secret. Well, not a secret necessarily. They haven't been, divulging the truth about how serious the rib injury actually is. I have a hard time believing it's only been 11 days since or 10 days since the Sugar Bowl game. I have a hard time believing that hit he took, that he's 100% right now. Is he 50%, 75%, 100%? That's the difference. That's what we don't know. If he's close to 100%, then I would say this game will come down to the last drive or two for either team. If he's not 100%, if he's somewhere in the 50 to 75% range, I could see that being a problem for the Buckeyes tonight.
Yeah, the only really decided advantage I see for Ohio State would be the Justin Fields running ability. I never saw him as a Michael Vick, Vince Young type, Lamar Jackson, that he's at that level. Wow. But he's certainly at the high end of mobile quarterbacks. He is a threat. He's an athlete. And Mac Jones is pretty much, he's mobile. He can move around in the pocket. He's not a statue, but that would be the one comparison that I would make that would favor Ohio State without question. And so if Justin Fields can be a dynamic player, just from a health standpoint, I think that's what you're getting to more from the standpoint of just being able to make it through the game and being able to deliver the throws. But if he can provide the running threat, then that's a whole other dimension to all this.
Not to mention, I don't particularly think that anybody on Alabama's team is quote unquote dirty, but let's not kid ourselves here.
Sure.
When you know a player has a certain nagging injury, you're going to probably try to expose that a little bit and maybe give him a shot in the ribs early in the game to see where he stands. So anyway, I hope Justin Fields is healthy. And like I said, if he is healthy, the weapons on the outside for both of these teams, obviously Olave for Ohio State and Smith for Alabama, should be for a good show, because both of these defenses have a little bit of a weakness in the back end. And we've seen that all season with both teams. Wade for Ohio State, he didn't switch positions, but he switched the area of the field that he covers. So he's now on the perimeter. He has been all year. That's not typically where he was covering in previous years. So he's been a little bit of exposed on the outside by obviously good quarterbacks and good receivers. I think he gave up a couple of touchdowns to Cornell Powell against Clemson. So, I'm assuming that's who they're going to put on Smith. I mean, I don't know. They'll probably switch it up some, but do you think he'll shadow Smith, or they're going to put somebody else on him?
I've got a show every week with Ohio State beat writers, and they just believe Ohio State's going to play their defense, and wherever Devontae Smith lines up is where he lines up. Whoever's assigned to that position on the field, there he is. that Ohio State's not going to be mixing and matching and having guys run around all over the place. That's not their style of defense. Their style is to play right corner, left corner. You play that side of the field, you play that side of the field. This is what we do, and whoever lines up there is there.
Yeah. Also, the interesting thing about the Ohio State's defense is the scheme that they run 90% of the time is a cover three.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that Alabama is used to seeing. Most teams that play against Alabama in the SEC, play a nickel type defense. They need to, because of their passing attack. So who does that benefit more here, Mark? Does it benefit Alabama more because there's going to be less defensive backs to cover those elite wide receivers? Or does it benefit Ohio State more because Alabama's not used to seeing those formations?
I'm going to have to say that it benefits Ohio State just for what you just stated in not seeing those formations, because it's one thing to see them. It's another thing to react on the field to them. You can walk through and practice after you've studied the game tape and the coaches have been able to communicate to the players, this is how we're going to have to change our thought process and our responsibilities. And then to walk through it, I think that takes another level of understanding, but then to respond and to change your process of approach in the moment and your instincts that have been built upon rep after rep after rep after rep, I think is somewhat of a difficult thing to do. Not that I think the Alabama defense is going to collapse and blow a bunch of coverages, but it may happen the one or two times they could be crucial.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that Ohio State's going to do something similar to Alabama that they did to Clemson, or try to do something similar to what they did to Clemson, and that is eliminate the run threat. They're going to try to keep Najee Harris as a non-factor. They succeeded in doing that in the run game for Travis Etienne pretty much the entire game. You got a couple of big plays in the passing game, but nothing really, there wasn't any game-changing plays or anything like that. I think that's what Ohio State will do, and if they're able to do that, and pressure Mac Jones anywhere close to the way that they were able to pressure Trevor Lawrence, that's where this game it will be won for the Buckeyes.
Remind everyone that this is our college football coast to coast show here with Pigskin Pete every Monday, noon Eastern time. So we're here every week. We've been doing this like 17 weeks with Pigskin Pete, both on his channel and over here for the time being. So lock it in right here. Make it appointment streaming for you every Monday, noon Eastern time. We've got the super chat available to you, and just remind you that this is all possible based on your individual contributions. Want to let you know that if you've got contact with anyone who could set us up with a sponsorship, please let me know at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. So again, whether that be you personally, own a business, or somebody that you know that could benefit from the viewership. We had about well over 6,000 views on the video last week. So that could be beneficial to you. Please contact us at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Leave your comments, your questions, debate topics, playoff questions, championship game, but we're talking college football top to bottom. Nothing's off the agenda list as we get to some other topics, and we'll get back to the championship game, but want to make sure we get a couple items in here. So, Pete, we've got Jim Harbaugh re-upping with Michigan through 2025, incentive-laden contract that, at least based on my Michigan sources, I do a segment with a Michigan podcast guy, Steve Dace, every Tuesday. He believes very much favors the university. I got to admit, I've not read into it. I've not read up on the conditions of the contract, other than all the reports before it was released was that basically they were allowing him to check out the NFL. There was a contract extension written up for weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months. And then when he got around to signing it, he did, because he either didn't like what he saw in the NFL or nothing was serious enough offered to him, that he re-upped with Michigan. And they basically have set things up to where instead of making at the top of the line in college football, he's taking a significant pay cut, and he's got to deliver to make big money.
This contract clearly favors the university. They basically cut his salary in half. So his annual salary went from $8 million to $4 million. and it's all incentive based. So he has the opportunity to make up to $8 million a season, depending on how they perform, division championship, conference championship, playoff wins, and the whole 9 yards. I haven't read over every little detail of it, but that's the gist of it. And what I think this means, Mark, and they also lowered the buyout considerably. So what I think this really means is that he's on a year-to-year contract at this point, because the extension, how many years the extension is completely meaningless. All that really matters is the buyout. That's it. I think if he has another terrible season next year, they'll go ahead and buy him out. He may, if he has a decent season, that may buy him another year. But I basically believe that this is just a year-to-year thing until one of two things happens. Either he has a terrible season and they just let him go, or like you just mentioned about the NFL, he finds an attractive job that he wants in the NFL, and he's the one that steps away.
Yeah, it's quite. It's basically come down to a situation where he's not performed in recent years, especially this year's been a disaster, and you can make all the excuses you want about the pandemic, but everybody had to play under the same conditions, and his program is coming off the rails. He did lift it up initially in the first couple of years. It then plateaued, and he maintained a top 15 program until this past season, but we've seen decline over the last couple of years, and so they've set him up in, I think, a pretty fair way. It favors the university, as you say, but it's in a fair way to say, hey, we could have fired you, but you've done enough here. We believe in you to a certain extent, but you really need to prove it. And yeah, the year-to-year contract, the other is window dressing, I guess, maybe to fool a few recruits out there, maybe, but to let everyone know that, both sides have a pretty clear opt-out at the end of each season.
The question is, what is the threshold? Is it time, because this is a tough thing to try to achieve, even for Jim Harbaugh. Is it time that you win the division or you're gone? I mean, what's the threshold here? Is it a certain amount of wins? Is it having to win the division? Is it beating Ohio State at least once? I mean, what exactly is the straw that breaks the camel's back for him? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it would be fascinating to know what's discussed between power brokers in a situation like this. But I'm like you. I think beating Ohio State pretty much lets everything else fall into place, unless you have this 8-4 season and you come up with a miraculous effort on the final day of the season and beat Ohio State and still lose the division. That's certainly possible. But for most of Harbaugh's seasons, 2015, 16, 18, 19, you take those 4 seasons, they beat Ohio State, they win the division. So it kind of all falls into place. If he can continue to maintain, which they did in this year, a good program, a top 15 type program, and they can actually pull through against the Buckeyes, then it all kind of ties together. But you're right. If they go into Columbus and they're undefeated, they're having this great season, but they lose, and Ohio State still goes to the Big Ten championship, still goes to the playoff because they're undefeated. And I got to think that there's some kind of combination that they're not going to fire him after 11-1 and losing to Ohio State.
So I don't see a lot of Michigan fans over on my YouTube channel, a couple here and there. So what is your sort of like, if you have your thumb on the temperature of the feeling within the Michigan fan base as a whole, feeling towards Jim Harbaugh right now in 2021, what's the consensus feeling about him amongst the Wolverine fans?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good contingent over here, and I think I got the feeling that most of them are done with him, wanted him to be gone, were fed up, and it just turned in the last couple of years where they were like, we're seeing the same thing over and over, and now we see Ohio State to continue to elevate and inch up a little bit more, and wow, we're so far beneath them. We need to start from the ground up. He's not the guy that's going to get this done. He's proven this. It's been 6 years. Somebody else, we need to start from ground zero. When they're losing to Michigan State and struggling with Rutgers in triple overtime, I think that showed them enough to say, Man, and we've cycled through a couple more quarterbacks. Joe Milton was supposed to be the answer, and this guy's supposed to be developing quarterbacks. And this Joe Milton had one good game, and then within 3 weeks, he's not the guy. He was the guy. He's not, like it's not just the record, but it's all that he was supposed to bring is not coming to fruition, and it's going the other way. I would say 80-90% of the people that I see commenting from the Michigan fan base were done with him and wanted him out.
Yeah. And I would say it's easy to criticize a coach for, I mean, if you have Ohio State in your division every year, look, that's a tough road for any coach in the country, right? But what are we, 6 years now? 5, 6 years? Yeah, you got to win that division at least once by now. You have to beat Ohio State at least once by now. And then meanwhile, other teams in the Big Ten, like Indiana, who have obviously much fewer resources than a place like Michigan does, are on the rise. And yours, I don't know. It seems to me as if they're declining. Michigan, they're not even staying flat. They're declining at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. They hit a plateau in 2016. That was the year they should have won it. Would have gone to the playoff with a Big Ten championship win. It's almost like where Florida State was 2015-16 into 17, because 17 they had their first bad year, but they were still competitive with Clemson on the field. It would have been interesting to see a Florida State program maintain the level that they were at in 2015-16, losing to Clemson, going 10-3, winning some bowl games, but constantly losing to Clemson. That would have been what we're seeing with Michigan up until this year when they collapsed.
Yeah.
Where Clemson just owns it.
And we thought, well, I don't know how you thought. I know certainly I thought that with the weird year that we had with COVID, that a lot of coaches would get a free pass.
Yeah.
Maybe that's somewhat what happened with Harbaugh, and that may have something to do with it. But there was a lot of coaches fired. I mean, it almost was like no hiccup. It was a normal type of year where you had whatever it was, 7 or 8 major college football programs fire their coach. So we didn't really see a step back because of COVID. And maybe that has something to do with them keeping Harbaugh around for another year or two, is because the more coaches that are fired around college football, the smaller the coaching pool comes from to choose from coaches. So I don't know if that played anything into it as well.
Absolutely. And they are most likely going to retain their offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, and looking for a defensive coordinator. So I had several discussions, whether it was on this Michigan podcast or on my channel, about the timing of all this and whether that's benefiting Michigan or hurting Michigan. I had to think that it only was a detriment to Michigan. And that's another reason why they had to really lay the screws to him, is that while he's contemplating whatever he's contemplating, and it had to be all about the NFL, because the reports are that they've had this contract extension in place and offered to him for quite a long time, going back to at least early December, late November, that it was all about the NFL. He's hurting himself in recruiting at the time and hurting, therefore, the program and the university. And then he's also hurting himself in assembling, not that he has to assemble a complete coaching staff, but the defensive coordinator job was out there and he's lost on a few big candidates. Which brings us to the Auburn situation, which ties into South Carolina. And you were the guy that has your beat on the pulse of the South Carolina program about as well as anyone that I'm in contact with. To a certain extent, I do have a Columbia, South Carolina radio guy that comes on a regular basis, does a great job. But, that Clemson, South Carolina connection is interesting, whether I'm talking to you or talking on the South Carolina side. It's pretty deep, even though it's a lopsided rivalry right now. You guys keep tabs on each other. So we've got this Auburn situation where Brian Harson's hired. A lot of people don't know about him in the SEC at Auburn, but based on record accomplishments, it's an okay hire. I was for the hire. I wasn't like, this is an A+ hire, this is a no-brainer, but seemed like a capable hire to me. Our concerns about him adjusting to the SEC and life there. He gets Mike Bobo as offensive coordinator out of South Carolina. Of course, one-time Georgia quarterback, Georgia coordinator, Colorado State head coach. And the big pickup for Auburn was defensive coordinator Derek Mason. Obviously, he did wonders with the Stanford defense. And did about as well as most outside of James Franklin at Vanderbilt as head coach. But this Bobo situation kind of caught your eye.
Well, I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was on record as saying I liked the Shane Beamer hire. I mean, if I'm a Gamecock fan, because it's something different than what the route that they've been going and hasn't been working. And that's, they went outside of the box, got a young guy who's never been a head coach before, who has been working under some of the best coaches in college football for many years. So Steve Spurrier, obviously his father, Frank Beamer, and then, of course, most recently, Lincoln Riley. So he has a pedigree of working with some of the greatest minds in college football for a while now. Never coached as a head coach before. So I like that direction. It's an experiment. It's a gamble. But anytime you hire a coach, it's a gamble. I would prefer to go in a different direction, which they did. The interesting thing here is when he first came in, the first thing you start doing is assembling a staff, obviously. So he comes out and says, Mike Bobo's my guy. I want to keep Mike Bobo here. Bobo then says, I'm all in. I like to stay. I love it here in South Carolina. And that was the end of that. Well, it wasn't much longer after that. I guess it was last Tuesday or Wednesday. The new coach at Auburn contacts Bobo. Bobo goes to Beamer and says, hey, Auburn has some interest in me coming there. I'm going to meet with the guy tomorrow. 2 days later, he's out the door. So basically, Shane Beamer put his reputation and name on the line, saying, I want to keep Bobo here. Bobo said he wanted to stay there. And it wasn't a week later, he was out the door, which, I don't know if you can really blame Bobo. There's a huge talent gap between the players at Auburn and players at South Carolina. And not to mention, I don't know if you've seen South Carolina's recruiting rankings for 2021. I think it's around 100 in the nation. So clearly, Auburn is a better job as an offensive coordinator than South Carolina is. So what does South Carolina do? They go out and hire a guy. What's this guy's? Do you know his name, Mark? Satterfield is his last name. I've never heard of the guy before.
I saw the headline and I knew that it wasn't that Satterfield at Louisville. Yeah. I did not look into it. What name do we have here? Shoot, I don't even have my phone on me.
I don't know what it's. That's how I think he was a coach at Tennessee Tech or something along those lines.
I saw that name and I thought he's got to be a brother. He's got to be a son. I don't think Scott Satterfield's that old.
Right. Yeah. So that was the other question I had. I don't know anything about this guy, but I would assume that he's most likely related to Scott Satterfield in some way. I don't know though.
This South Carolina recruiting ranking. So you were mentioning the 2020 haul being that low, right? The one that's already been signed.
The one
or 21
in December 2000.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's astonishing. That's alarming. Like, that's so bad. Basically, you've got, as you well know, almost the entire SEC's in the top 25. Like 11 or 12 are typically in the top 25, typically. And South Carolina with Will Muschamp, regardless of what he produced on the field, he was usually bringing in the 17th, the 19th, in there. He was between 15 and 20 every year in the recruiting rankings. And again, the entire conference is almost within, except Missouri, Vandy. They're pretty much the two that lag. They'll get into the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. But so, yeah, South Carolina's recruiting class that's alarming how bad it is.
Well, just think about it, Mark. There's 65 teams in the Power Five. So that just by those numbers alone, you have to, if you assume every other Power 5 team is ahead of them, which they aren't, but let's just use that as a round number. That means there's at least 35 group of 5 or lower teams that are recruiting better than South Carolina is right now.
And they're going to improve that a little bit, but not much. There's another maybe 15. It's usually about 15% of the players are going to sign in February. And maybe they'll have a great run. Again, my South Carolina guy had mentioned that because I talked to him about the same thing. And I said, this is crazy. I'm sitting there on signing day looking at, and then I'll have a guest on and I'll look for the recruiting ranking. Okay, UCLA 16, talk to the dude. And then I'm like going South Carolina. So I must have missed them. And I would go back up to about 20 and look. And I was like, they're like 90 something. And he said, well, that's going to get better. And I said, it can only get so much better. Maybe it goes up 20 spots because down there you can jump pretty quickly. But still, that's a bad start for Shane Beamer.
It's a terrible start for him. And I don't really know mean, how long do you give this guy? They're such a bad way right now. I mean, I don't. If you continue to recycle coaches every 3 or 4 years when they're this bad, you're never going to get anywhere.
Will Muschamp's still out there as defensive coordinator possibilities.
Well, there's rumors that he's going to take an analyst job at the University of Georgia.
Okay.
If he takes a coordinator job, especially in the SEC, I believe that negates his buyout. His buyout was $15 million. So,
yeah,
or somewhere around there. So it doesn't make much sense for him to take a coordinator position right now.
No. He will not do that.
I do know that he's enrolled his children in school in Athens. So that tells me he's moving to Athens. He's got a son that plays for the University of Georgia. So I would assume they're going to pay him for his services in some way, shape, or form, sort of like Nick Saban does over at Alabama.
Cool. All right. Yes. Georgia taking that Alabama model of just loading up with like high-priced, experienced, big-name analysts all over the place.
Yeah.
This Alabama coaching staff has expanded to I don't know what in the last 10 years.
There's a bunch of them over there. the Nick Saban halfway house is what we call it.
But he's delivering, so
yeah,
that's all that takes.
It's working.
So again, everyone, comments, questions in the live chat, we will answer them. Don't see anything popping up right now.
I think I saw a super chat earlier from Wilkie. He had a question.
Oh, I missed that one. Oh man,
it was towards the beginning of the show. That's probably why.
So yeah, if I miss it on StreamYard, then it's gone.
Yeah. I believe I do remember what his question was, though. So thank you, Wilkie, for the for the support, sir. His question was food for thought or something along those lines. If Alabama wins tonight, does Nick Saban retire? I would say no. I would say win or lose, Nick Saban will be on the sidelines at Alabama this coming season.
I would agree with that. He's given no indication that that's what he wants. A lot of guys in his position, well, nobody's quite been in his position, but accomplished guys that maybe there's a reason that one championship means something. It's the only one. We've seen a lot of really good coaches that needed a championship at one point in both football and basketball, then retire when they finally get it. Or maybe it's won at a new school, or there's something, or it's been a long, long time. But with him, he just keeps racking up championships, and it just seems like he doesn't have to build a legacy. He doesn't have to cement it. And I believe that unless he surprises all of us, seems to be in good health. He loves what he's doing. He seems to be more encouraging of and supportive of his team than he used to be. I don't know if you noticed this. Every time he talks about how, not just in the pandemic year, but just this has been building for several years, where he's just more positive, where nothing used to please the guy. And they win 10 or 12 games in a row. They just won a national championship. We need to get better here. We need to get, nobody's doing anything right. Nobody's pleasing him. Where I'd say gradually over the last 5, 6, 7 years, it seems to get more and more where he's complimenting at these halftime interviews and interviews after the game about, that they still need to work on things, but he's how the players have handled things, how they've improved, that he's got great leadership, that they're all supportive and they're great and they're fun to work with. He's so much more complimentary of his teams in the last several years than he used to be.
He's gotten a little bit softer in his old age, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But as far as, when he'll walk away, because the theory is, as soon as he breaks the record, national championship record from Bear Bryant, right? Is that what the assumption here is, that then he'll walk away? Has he already done that? Or Bear Bryant won 6, right?
I think depending on how you count them at Alabama, I think they're up to about 40. It seems like they're adding them all the time. So he's at his are a little bit easier to count, but he's at 6 total.
Yeah.
And I think with the 5 at Alabama, he can tie the Bear with 6. I might be wrong on that. Alabama fans, don't jump on me. I don't know exactly how many national championships Bear Bryant supposedly has, because some of his are in question as well.
I believe the consensus is he's at 6.
Okay.
I think. So that a win tonight would put him past Bryant. But I don't think that's all that matters to Nick Saban. He strikes me as the kind of guy that one of two things is going to have to happen before he retires. One, he's going to start losing a lot. The program's going to fall apart because he's just too old to do what he's been doing in the past. Or number two is he has some sort of health problem related to his age. Other than that, I could see him staying around for another 5 or 6 years at minimum.
I could too. He has certainly not lost it.
No. And I mean, you look at what was the coach at Kansas State that was what is he, 80 years old?
Bill Snyder.
Bill Snyder, yeah. I don't know if you'll see that. I don't know if you'll see an 80-year-old Nick Saban on the sidelines, but he's still in his 60s. He's not that old.
Bobby Bowden, Joe Paterno were both mid-70s, if not a little bit later than that. They were in that 75, 76 range. I don't know who else we have out there.
Yeah, I could see him doing that. What is it? What is Saban? 60?
I think he's 68 or 9.
68. Okay, so yeah, 6 years to put him at 75. That's about right.
I think he and Mac Brown are at the top end of the age scale.
He actually looks pretty good for his age.
Sure.
He does. He doesn't look 69.
No, not at all.
I guess that's what all that money can do and winning can preserve you.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
And for as much as that dude drives himself, again, he's just built that thing up in such a machine that maybe he's been able to take life a little bit more. I just think of Nick Saban making comments. I'm trying to think at what point in our nation's history in the last few years something catastrophic happened. Just much like Bill Belichick, I've heard things come out of Nick Saban's mouth that I've thought, really, if he's telling the truth, then that man is obsessed with football.
Yeah.
Major news events have happened, and he said, I didn't even know that happened. I was locked in my bunker studying game film. We were just isolated.
Wilkie with another super chat there.
Really? How am I screwing this up? Here we go. Let me get to the bottom.
This is an interesting question, or at least the first part of it is.
Where am I not? There we go. All right, Wilkie. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Apologize for not getting the other one posted, but there we go. Wilkie, game day food. What kind of, snacks? What's going to be in use here? Oh, kind of mic stands and.
Yeah, what kind of mics and stands?
Mics and stands. Yes.
The game day food part, I could tell you what I had on game day for the Sugar Bowl. We had barbecued, what do they call it? Little Smokies, the little tiny sausage weenies or whatever they are. Hot wings and shrimp. Some like Cajun style boiled shrimp. So that will be my go-to for game day. One of those three things. You have to have at least one type of seafood. You have to have some sort of chicken, and you have to have some sort of weenies, whether it be hot dogs or the little barbecue dogs.
This is a personal rule that you apply?
No, I don't. I mean, I'll have whatever, but those are probably my three go-to things.
Well, first off, Wilkie, I completely botched your question. So I got to admit the contacts aren't in. So I've blown up the screen is why I thought that was all one question. And I'm like, what is he getting at? Did he just like completely botch typo snacks when he said stand? So two separate questions out of Wilkie here. So I'll address the first one along with Pigskin Pete. We got the game day food. So I'm sure you're well aware that the Cleveland Browns won their first playoff game last night since 1994 with Bill Belichick, who we just mentioned on the sidelines. So that was a big event for my son and I. We watched the Browns win a playoff game. So we're Browns fans. They don't really have my heart. My heart's not too invested in the Browns, but they're technically my NFL team. And so that was fun to watch last night. So for us, that was actually at the last minute because I'm trying to be good with my eating habits, and I'm like a junk food junkie. Like seriously, like I'm off the rails that I have to have it out of the house. I can't be disciplined. And even if I have it out of the house, I still may run down to McDonald's 5 minutes before it closes at 2 in the morning and get myself like a serious large milkshake with whipped cream on the top kind of thing. So I made a mad dash down the street to get chocolate chip cookies, Oreos, and 2 types of ice cream for us last night. But that was after I made myself some shepherd's pie. I am not a cook, but I'm in the process of delivering HelloFresh here to where I can teach myself how to cook.
There
So
you
I
go.
made myself some decent shepherd's pie, which would not be a selection of mine typically, especially not for a game day, but I just made that for myself. Okay, now we move on to the mics and the stands. I'll let you go, Pete.
The stand is a blue, same company that makes the Yetis. It's like a spring-loaded mic stand, and this is just a Rode Pod mic. I've had 4 different microphones in the past 12 months, so I'm sticking with this one for a while.
Because of wear and tear, or you didn't like them?
Combination of, but well, the first one I had was just a blue Yeti, and I just wanted to upgrade from that originally. And I got that one that everyone called the Lantern, the one that it was glowing, it glowed orange or reddish color. And then when I got my new soundboard, I had to get rid of that because it was a USB mic and I needed an XLR mic.
Yeah,
another plug. And then the last one I had, I just didn't like the mic. It just the sound didn't sound good. It was distorted. Mm-hmm. So then I got this one. So I'm sticking with this one for a while.
I had at one point a Techna. I'm missing part of the name.
Audio Technica.
Audio Technica. That would make sense. It is a mic, Audio Technica. But I looked like I needed a keyboard. You know, it looked like I was going to just break off into a little keyboard playing or karaoke. It just didn't look good. Just didn't look the part. And it wasn't a great mic. Before that, I had a Yeti that sat on a stand that was like one of those old school radio mics, or what Letterman would have on the desk, just to pay homage to the, that look from the 40s and 50s. And then I went to this at some point. So the stand, I don't know what I have. I've got it clamped back here on a other desk, but it's a Heil, which is fairly industry standard. It's not like the most expensive thing you're going to find by any stretch of the imagination, but it was recommended to me. So it seems to be working at this point. I do need to get a screen. I'd like to get one of those, either you see one of those large screens that will, because it's pretty unidirectional where you got to be hovering right over it. I'd like to have a little bit more flexibility, or get the, I've got to get the screen as like you have, where I'm popping too many P's and it doesn't come across too well.
Yeah, I don't like the big pop filters, the big circle ones. They cover your entire face.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about, but it has to be, positioned the right way.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, Wilkie.
Rarely do we get the
no, nobody cares about the technical.
Yeah, they just want to talk football.
Do you know a little piece of trivia here, Mark?
Yeah.
So as you know, you're a Browns fan. So the last time the Browns won a playoff game was 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Right. What happened the next day after the Browns won their playoff game 25 years ago?
Okay. I only have one question, and that is the obvious, that I'm guessing, let me grab this super chat, that it involves
college football
playoffs. Pardon me?
It involves college football.
Oh, college football. Mm-hmm. So this was in December/January of '94. It was a wild game against the Patriots that the Browns won. It would have been. So it's the '94 season.
'94 season, but this would have taken place in January for either 1st or 2nd of 1995. So '94 season, playoffs for the season, but the actual game was played in '95. So what happened the day after? I believe the Browns won that playoff game, I want to say on the 1st of January in '95. Right.
Well,
for the 94 season.
I certainly know the national championship scenarios and what games needed to be played going back to, I don't know, the late 60s, something in that range. So in 1994, Nebraska won a national championship over Miami at the Orange Bowl. So that's going to be my first guess. Nebraska beat Miami for the national championship at the Orange Bowl.
That may be the national championship, but that's not, I don't believe that's what happened the day after. The day after the Browns won their playoff.
So are we pointing to another bowl game?
Yes.
Penn State won the Rose Bowl over Oregon, 38-20.
This game actually took place in 95. Must have been the same situation, 94 season, 95 bowl game.
Okay. Rashaan Salam won the Heisman, but he did not play in a huge bowl game. You would have had a Sugar Bowl that was involving, I'm going blank here. It was like a Florida State game.
Hey, somebody in the chat got it.
Where do we go here? They probably
Yagov 22.
Oh, okay. Why did I not say that? That's funny because David Greenshield called me about that like 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
And I could tell you every detail of that game. I got the game on a VHS tape.
Wasn't it like 20-17 or something like that?
24-17. It was tied with about 50 seconds left. It was Jay Barker, a little swing pass to Sherman Williams, scored a touchdown with about 45 seconds left. Bama won. Joey Galloway hit a long touchdown in that game. Alabama went 12-1. They lost the SEC championship game by 1 point to Florida. I was at that game, covering that game. They lost to Florida 24-23. And, Alabama, Ohio State. I did not realize that was on New Year's Day, or
I believe it was on the 2nd of January.
The 2nd, because of the NFL games, they moved.
Yeah.
The other game. So I was going at the high end of college football. That game was a good game, couple top 10 teams, but it didn't factor into the national championship because that was Miami and Nebraska were undefeated.
Yes. So people believe in some sort of fate or the repeat of history. You may believe Alabama is going to win tonight, just based on that fact alone.
Alabama won the first 1-2. That was one of 3 times that they played in bowl games. And I'm old enough to remember the first time they played at the Sugar Bowl in 78. Woody Hayes, Bear Bryant. Alabama smacked them around pretty good. They played a really close kickoff classic. Do you remember those, Pete?
Oh, yeah.
Were you around for those? Okay.
Yeah.
Played in the kickoff classic. My story there is that was, so this was in 86. Man, I got to stop dating myself. So this was, I was supposed to be at an orientation class for college, and I went and I left so I wouldn't miss the kickoff of the kickoff classic, Alabama, Ohio State. Alabama won that game 16-10. Then they met in the Citrus Bowl. Then the college football playoff 6 years ago, Ohio State won. So Alabama leads 3-1. Dalton, appreciate that super chat, sir. Appreciate you being here. Last time Browns made the playoffs, Ohio State won the Natty. 2002. Yep, you are right. They lost to the Steelers in that game. Broke out to a big lead, much like they did last night, but they blew it that time.
Yeah. That was shocking last night.
Yeah, it was. We were having a good time with that.
I was actually surprised that the Steelers were favored in the game. I thought the Browns should have been favored in the game. But I didn't see, I don't think anybody saw that coming, that drubbing that they gave them.
I don't know if you and Chevy 1 go back to back or go back and forth on delivering a little trash talk, but Chevy
1 is. Nope. What's he say?
Chevy 1's got what's up, Pete? What about those Buckeyes? Clemson got to play us without the refs giving them the game. Who's daddy? That will be Sir Daddy to you, and Clemson and Bama might win. You just hate OSU.
Yeah, I hate Ohio State because I had them in my top 4 all season long. He's one of these people. First of all, he doesn't understand how the daddy thing works. You can't be 1-4 against somebody and be their daddy.
Yeah, that's kind of tough.
Yeah. And he's also one of these guys that continues to, here we are over a year removed from the Fiesta Bowl game. They just beat the crap out of Clemson last week, and he's still crying about the refs in 2019.
Yeah. Well, there's Miami fans still crying about 2002
I know.
at the Fiesta Bowl. Yeah, it should be a heck of a game tonight, hopefully. And I guess Alabama's still holding at about an 8-point favorite. I haven't looked at the line in a long time. Something in that range.
Who's going to be the second running back today if Master Teague doesn't? Is Master Teague not playing?
See, he was not available for the last game, and Mayan Williams is a guy that was not seen or heard from for pretty much the entire season for Ohio State, and he got into the Clemson game and did pretty well, looked pretty good. But I was thinking that watching Trey Sermon run against Northwestern, and Master Teague at some point in that game left the game, was not seen or heard from against Clemson, and his availability is in question. And I don't know that Trey Sermon can carry the ball like 22, 25 times against Alabama. I think he needs a little relief. Yeah. And at least Mayan Williams against Clemson showed that he could be capable. And as Derek is mentioning here, Steel Chambers, Marcus Crowley, yes. Very talented guys coming out of high school, have proven very little against any reasonable competition. You know, a lot of carries against the FAUs of the world and the Rutgers of the world for those guys, but they haven't played in a big game, not even a big Big Ten game, let alone Alabama for the national championship. I don't think you want to rely on I don't even know if you want to give either one of those guys a carry. So the running core is a little thin for the Buckeyes.
Sermon has been great in the last two games that he's played in, though.
He has been. To my surprise, Cheryl is telling us that Master Teague will play. I haven't picked up a whole lot of news. I got to admit that in the last couple of days. I've been a bit out of the loop if there's been anything released. I don't know if she's just stating that or has heard anything, because the shows that I was delivering just a few days ago with Ohio State writers, there wasn't necessarily thought that he would be available.
Yakov 22. We may do that at some point. We're still trying to figure things out here. He's suggesting that sometimes we take calls from people on the show.
Yeah, we're going to dive into the off season, obviously, here, and there's plenty to talk about during the off season, but it's going to take a little bit more organization and not just be like, oh, these were all the games from over the weekend. Here are the next week's of games. So certainly we'll take comments and questions from all of you, and we'll think about the format of the show going forward. But we do appreciate you guys being here, and the show seems to be gaining some steam. We had by far our most successful show last week. I don't know what all came together last week. We had like 550 on the line at one point.
Yeah.
And the last I checked, had about 6,500 views for the show. So appreciate all of that. We've got Vinay. Vinay he's a wild man. He's just, dude, he's commenting all the time. I don't know if he comes over to your channel, but Vinay is watching like Ohio State game film, giving me like breakdowns like by the hour, saying, okay, I went back and I looked at the Indiana game, and when we were playing cover 2, this happened, and when we this is insane. So Vinay has made his way to Miami for the game, actually.
Oh.
And says, I was told by Tim May. So Tim May is like one of those old time Ohio State beat writers who's been around the program for like 45 years. Tim May says Master cleared concussion protocols and is available. So there you go. That would be a huge boost for the Buckeyes, because going into this season, and for the first, well, they only played 7 games, but for the first maybe 4, it seemed like most of the season, Master Teague was the guy. It wasn't Trey Sermon. It was Master Teague was the guy. So it would be good if he would be available. He's more of a wrecking ball than Trey Sermon.
Yeah. Those two together would be an added threat. Now, Trey Sermon's been great, especially the last couple of weeks. I believe Vinay. If everything you say about him is true, then I believe that he's in the know. I do have a question for him. He can just type the answer in the chat, or if anybody else knows the answer to this, is how many fans are they allowing down there at the Orange Bowl tonight?
Cheryl's getting on me. Cheryl's amazing. Cheryl's our moderator. Cheryl, you know better than that. Come on. I just didn't know if you were just saying basically Master's going to play or if you were giving me some kind of stated report there.
Yeah, come on, Mark. What's wrong with you?
What is wrong with me? And I don't need that reputation. I'll be getting killed here.
The line has moved all the way up to 9, Mark. It was at 7.5 for a long time, and now it's at 9. I think that's too many points.
I think that it is too many points, and that doesn't mean it can't be a very good game and it still be eclipsed. That means for me, when I say that, I mean that if there's any way they could possibly play 100 times, which of course I'm talking fantasy world, that Ohio State wins, they cover that spread most of the time.
Yeah.
Of course, it could be a 3-point game. It could be a great game, and then Alabama gets a pick 6 with 45 seconds left in the game and wins by 10. But yeah, that's a lot of points.
It is, but for anybody who understands how the way the lines move, it's based on how much money's put on each team. So what that tells you is that there's been a considerable amount of money put on Alabama for it to move from 7.5 to 9, which usually favors the underdog at that point because there's a reason Vegas has so much money. It's not because the majority of the people that place bets win. Okay, it's the opposite of that. So I would actually take the Buckeyes at +9 without even thinking about it right now. It may go down again before kickoff. I'm getting conflicting reports in the chat here about the attendance numbers. Cheryl says 16,000 fans apiece for each team. April says 13,000 tickets. So I don't know.
Roger says 16.
Yeah, got it. We're all over the place here. So somewhere between 13 and 16,000.
All right, we've got a pretty consistent 16 coming in here.
Yeah.
I got to guess Hard Rock's in the 80,000 vicinity, 79, 80.
It's probably closer to 70, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge stadium.
Well, most of the NFL stadiums have fewer seats because they don't have bench seating. They have actual chairs. So, but anyway, that would be about 20%, somewhere around there.
Our guy Rick is asking about Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle will be playing tonight. In terms of the way I got it midweek, was that he was cleared to play, and that Nick Saban was leaving it up to him. And so he's been working and working out and going through all the therapy and everything involved. I would doubt if he would be like steamrolling toward preparing himself and then not want to play. So now that may not be 60 plays. That might be 15 plays, 20
right.
plays.
That's the key to this. He'll be limited, I believe. They won't put him in any sort of danger just for one game situation, I don't think.
And he could catch one pass and be a factor, whether it's as a real decoy, meaning when you have a decoy, you're setting up a formation to say that's the dude that you need to cover, and then something else happens, or you fake the ball to him, or he's just a distraction. He's something to be accounted for. He's not a decoy per se, but he serves as one because he's by himself in a formation, or he's got to be accounted for, that the defense has to shade a certain way, and it opens things up for others.
Just having him on the field is a plus, period.
Yeah.
You have to account for him.
Okay. I have actually not made my prediction yet. Have you gone on to make an official prediction?
I haven't, but I can do so.
Oh, you're ready to go.
Well, I've already wagered on this game, so I took Ohio State at the +9. But if we want a final score prediction here, I believe this is going to be a close game, and I believe it's going to be a high scoring game. The over under was 75. I think it goes slightly over that. So I'm going to say Alabama scores 45 and Ohio State scores 38. So that would give them a 7-point victory, right? And so they would cover the 9 and it would go over.
The more I think about this game, the more I'm favoring pulling the trigger on the Buckeyes. So Ohio State fans who watch me on a regular basis, who know who I root for, and I know that that's a veiled secret from time to time with a lot of people. I love when people call me and they have no idea who I root for. So it's not a secret. I'm an Ohio State fan, but I just don't talk about it. Don't accentuate it. I did pick Clemson to win that game. I picked Clemson to win the game. Close game, but I did pick Clemson.
So did everybody else, though.
So I will pick against Ohio State from time to time. It doesn't happen often, and it shouldn't happen often since they lose like an average of 1 game a year. But I don't know the last time I picked Ohio State to lose. At one point in my life, it never happened. Like by principle, it never happened. But considering what I'm doing now, I try to play it straight as best I can. Picked Clemson to win. I think it's easier to pick Alabama. I think there are reasons they're number one. There are reasons that they are a favorite. I think it's legit. But I would not be surprised if Ohio State won, and I have not delivered my prediction. So I will say this. Even though SEC Dog tells me it's okay to be a homer, I will say that we're going to go live at 4 o'clock Eastern time today. I'm going to take calls. I'm going to go for 4 hours. We've got, about an 8:15 kickoff?
Yeah.
Something like that. So we'll go about 4 hours, take your calls, and I'll deliver my prediction. I'll figure out then.
All right. I'll be listening then.
Got a good feeling about the Buckeyes. I'm just, if I want to go nuts and bolts, I'm going to say Alabama wins the game. If I'm strictly going sizing up the matchups, I think Alabama's, for as good as Ohio State and as talented as they are, Alabama's offense is just at a different level.
I think this is going to be a close game. I really do. I hope it is. We had blowouts basically in both semifinal matchups. Even though I'm a Clemson guy, I still want to see a competitive game just as a football fan. So I hope we see a competitive game tonight. I hope it's not one-sided. I've said this immediately following the Sugar Bowl. If the Buckeyes play as good as they played against Clemson, they will win this game. Period. I mean, there's nobody that would have stepped on the field with Ohio State that night and actually beat them. Nobody. Not even Alabama. So if they play to that standard, they'll win this game. Playing to that standard 2 games in a row, very difficult.
Yeah, I think, and this is not to excuse Clemson. This is not to in any way disparage. Again, I think it's reasonable to think, there's no way to prove it, that if Clemson and Ohio State played 10 times, Ohio State's not going out there on average and beating them as badly as they did. That's just not going to happen. There's not that much of a difference between the two teams. I think Ohio State proved that they're better, but the scores of those games would mostly be close if they played 10 times. And so, yes, Ohio State played in a near a perfect game. Did they play a perfect game? Of course, nobody plays a perfect game. They played, yes. Pigskin laid it out perfectly. They maxed out. And they're good enough to do that against Alabama and win the game. A lot of teams could play their best game. Tennessee could play its best game, and they're still going to lose to Alabama by a few touchdowns, if not more. But Ohio State's best game is going to beat Alabama. But that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask. I got more questions. I had a ton of questions about Ohio State going into the Clemson game. Some of them were answered. I still have more questions about this team than I do about Alabama.
Yeah. Roberto Lebron wants to know, where will Ryan Day be ranked in top coach in college football, win or lose? That's difficult to answer. I'd say win or lose, he's still considered to be a top 5 coach in all of college football. Right, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I don't know if you go through that process from time to time, kind of ranking the coaches, whether it's in a conference or nationally, but I'll do that from time to time. But it's tough to break the Dabo, Saban two at the top. And neither one of them have gotten to a point, like we were talking about Saban getting older, where he's Bobby Bowden or Joe Paterno.
Mm.
Because if you're ranking coaches, I rank them in the moment. So if we're sitting here 10 years ago ranking Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno, they're all-time like top 5 to 10 coaches. But in the here and now, they would have wherever. They could have been 30th or 40th because they had lost their fastball. But that's not the case here. But it's tough to get past Dabo and Nick for the combination of what they're doing right this second plus the track record. So, you can make cases for other coaches after those two, but Ryan Day is accomplishing the most other than those two right in the moment. You go 13-1, you barely lose a playoff game, then you turn around and you go to a national championship game as an undefeated team.
Yeah. I think obviously the next tier down is Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day. If you're talking about tiers between Saban and Sweeney, and then the next one down, if you're trying to figure out who would be ranked higher than the other between Riley and Day, clearly winning the national championship would put Day ahead of Riley because Riley hasn't won one yet. And I don't even know if there's another tier after that, Mark. I mean, is there anybody else that belongs in the discussion with Day and Riley currently?
No.
I don't think so either.
No. Kirby Smart would be the next guy I would think of.
Probably, yeah.
He's botched one position on the field. And I might have been the last person to come to the party on that one, because I usually withhold my judgment to say, okay, well, he might have been considering this, and Fromm wasn't bad. But my goodness, when you add it all up, it's now become years and years and layers of players to where what's going on there? He's doing everything else right. He's accumulating the talent, that's for sure.
Yeah. And last question here. Jordan Bowman wants to know, has anybody had a better start at Ohio State than Ryan Day? I'll let you answer that. I would have to say no. I think you can thank Urban Meyer for that, though. He created an organization that was turnkey. And as long as you have a competent guy, and obviously Ryan Day is very competent, then there wasn't going to be much of a drop-off, if any.
Okay, Jordan. Technically speaking, yes. But when you put it in true context, no. What I mean by that is Ryan Day's 13-1, 7-0. Yeah, he's 20-1. Technically, Urban Meyer started 24-0 at Ohio State. He went 12-0 the first season, couldn't win a national championship. They were on probation. Then he started off the next season 12-0. Then they lost to Michigan State and Clemson. So he won his first 24 games. So technically, Urban Meyer got off to a better start, but Ryan Day has played extremely well in his one loss, and I like to put losses and wins in context. So to me, that Clemson playoff loss is different than going to the playoff and losing like Oklahoma loses or getting blown out by 5 touchdowns. Then he turns around and he makes a national championship game. So even if he loses tonight and he's 20-2, to me, that is a more successful run, getting to 2 playoffs, going to a national championship game than what Urban Meyer was able to do with his first 2 years.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. We have pushed well past the 1 o'clock hour. I was losing track of time here, but we're here every Monday at noon Eastern time. And so we just ask that you lock it on in, and we appreciate the support. And thank you so much, everyone, for the super chats and for the questions and comments here with Pigskin Pete. So what you got available over there, I hope everybody subscribed on Pigskin Pete's channel. You can just search it right there in the search bar. on YouTube?
Well, the first and most important thing is tonight I will be over on Uncle Lou's channel. We will be live streaming the national championship game together. We'll be going on air around 8 p.m. and we'll be on air throughout the entirety of the game. So if you want to come hang out with us, have a little bit of watch party, and we'll have some fun over there doing that. Every Wednesday and Friday night at 10 p.m., I do have a live call-in show for about an hour to hour and a half. So for all the people that have something to get off their chest about me or Clemson or anything college football related, feel free to call in and give me a piece of your mind. And then, of course, I upload several, anytime there's breaking news in college football world, I'll upload a video that pertains to it. So go over to my channel, subscribe. It's Pigskin Pete, just like it says on the screen. Well, it's not on the screen right now, but,
We'll get it there. After we acknowledge SEC Dog, thank you so much for the accolades there. So for me, you guys know where to catch me. I'm right here. Hit the bell for the notifications once you've subscribed. Then you know when I'm uploading new content and have live shows. I need to do a better job of nailing down a live stream schedule for you. We do talk Ohio State football every Wednesday at 2 Eastern, Florida State every Wednesday at 6 Eastern. I will be live tonight before the game. So pregame with me, 4 o'clock Eastern time right here. I'll hand it over to Uncle Lou and Pigskin Pete, and you can catch them for the game. Then I'm going to be back here after the game to take your calls. That's always a good time. That's turned into a good time after the Saturday primetime games with a flood of you wanting to talk football, of course. So you can catch me before and after the game right here, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. All right, Pete, enjoy the game. Appreciate it as always, man.
Real quick, we had a late super chat come in. Thank you. I can sell you. He's just thanking us and saying go Bucks.
Good stuff. I can sell you. There's such a calm in the air. I'm so relaxed today. Thank you to both of you. Bucks win. Am I getting that right? 48-28.
He's real confident, isn't he?
All right, Pete. Enjoy the game, man. We'll see you.